Hey, what's going on, guys? Max here with BB, and today for 10 Minutes Max, we are going to do a longer than 10-minute video, basically just talking about what's happened in January and potentially what the view is heading into February. Can we turn things around? How's this cycle looking so far? Are we still on the right side of the high time frame trend here for a lot of altcoins, which have gotten bludgeoned basically from December through January? So let's give it a little bit of a look here. Here's the thing. And by the way, I didn't do any like planning for this video. It's going to be a little bit longer. I wanted to just kind of come and just have like a conversation and go over some higher time frame charts, things like that, and figure we could do it all live, no problem. And I know some of you guys like when I do it in advance. Some like, doing it live together. But anyways, we're going to dive into it. So here is total three. All right. So it looks similar to others, right? But this is basically your altcoin index. All right. So this is everything in crypto outside of Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? This really isn't so bad, right? This doesn't look so bad here. It's really just kind of in a range. There's a couple ways you could draw it. You could either kind of do like this, or you could maybe tighten it up like this and say, this was a peak, then we dropped into a range, whatever. It's really not down so bad, right? It's, from high to low, it was down 16% for altcoins, not too much. Currently down, 12.5%, something like that. But really the issue here is not even so much like alts in general. It's like there's a handful that have been relatively heavy. One of them being Ethereum, which we need to talk about. And you'll see there's a discrepancy, right? So here's ETH, and then let's put total 3 down below, where you would want to think, I would want to think, I have thought, that Ethereum would be showing, a little bit more resiliency than it has been, right? So here's total 3. ETH is the second largest crypto asset by market cap. And you can see very clearly here, total 3, which is your index of all altcoins, clearly broke out of this high from March. Total 3 did, but ETH still has not been able to, right? So this is causing all kinds of complications that I didn't actually foresee. I figured, you know what? ETH might be a bit of a laggard, but this type of lag has surprised me. I'll be completely honest. But there's been a lot of altcoins that have been performing well, like some XRP. Doge has done relatively well. XLM's been doing well. Things like HBAR, I think, went on a run. A lot of these kind of like dino plays, some fundamental quote unquote plays, have been doing all right. But the Ethereum ecosystem is so large that, a lot of us are exposed to it. And this type of lag, I mean, it's not like, for example, if ETH had just even been tracking like, the basket of altcoins, below it, in theory, you would have seen, ETH join total 3 up in here, probably, get above the previous cycle high, up in here. If you can see that, I can make that line a little bit thicker so you can see it. And you would have seen it, doing this bit of price action, but it would have been, up here instead, right? But if ETH has been so weak that you have, it's such an obvious and honestly, like, just embarrassing, disheartening lag between what alts are doing and what ETH is doing. But so many alts are within the Ethereum ecosystem that they're sort of as a byproduct being, suppressed because their L1 ETH can't get off the mat, right? So that's a lot of the pain that people are feeling right now, is the underperformance of Ethereum as sort of an isolated altcoin, right? And it's not just that, but it's such a big looming, kind of elephant in the room, that's where your pain is deriving from, is really just Ethereum, right? And a prime example of that is, let's even look at like Pepe next to ETH, right? So here's Pepe, the large cap premier ETH beta. right? Obviously a meme coin for those that don't know what it is. I figured most of you probably know what it is at this point. But you can see that it takes very little for Pepe to pump when ETH gets moving, right? So, here's a prime example. Make it a little bit thicker. ETH moves up, Pepe moves up more. We see this time and time and time again. I mean, even here, Pepe was kind of leading ETH, but ETH had a nice ETF pump. Pepe had a nice kind of blow off here in May. And then, of course, going back, way, way, way further, you can see that, early last year in February, this is when you saw Pepe run up like 10x, and it was off the back of ETH, not even pulling like, it was about a 2x probably, a little bit less than a 2x, okay? But you're seeing these ETH plays just get destroyed by ETH, right? And there's only so much you can do where, a lot of Solana plays have been kind of booming because Sol is kind of grinding underneath the all-time high. Sol ETH has been up. Is it going to continue? We can talk about that, right? Is there going to be an ETH season? But like that's the real question, that we need to address, right? Is like, can we get Ethereum off the mat? Because there's so many projects, so many L2s, meme coins, ETH DeFi, right? It contributes to, ETH market cap is what, like, I don't know, 400 billion, give or take, something like that. I haven't checked it today. But outside of, ETH, there's, you know, additional hundreds of billions of dollars of value in crypto that is directly tied to Ethereum, which has been, like I showed you guys, just completely like in the gutter, compared to, honestly, like where I would have expected it to be at this point. And I haven't been expecting like a new all-time high for ETH quite yet, but I wouldn't expect it to be down so bad against like total 3 at this point. I would have expected like, here, for example, so Bitcoin USD, so Bitcoin's kind of in its first high time frame correction while in price discovery. So we'll draw out the previous all-time high here. What I really would have more or less expected is like Bitcoin, does this giant cup and handle under the previous cycle all-time high. We would have expected Ethereum to lag, so we can put ETH USD down below. Let's put some candles on there, right? And then, once Bitcoin pulls out of, its first high time frame correction, which we haven't done yet, and we'll talk about maybe when that could happen, I would have expected ETH to maybe at least be, at this point, a little closer to its all-time high, still not down at 3K, maybe a little above 4K. And then once ETH starts moving, typically that will trigger like, a big move from ETH BTC, which then would flow through to, something like others, which again is just like your altcoin index. But ETH, not to just continue to rag on ETH, even though it kind of deserves it here, I would have expected, a little bit more out of ETH. Like if we go back and we look at, the previous cycle, right? Let's try to put this in logs so we can see it. Here, we'll go to the 5-day. All right. And let's just mark out all the all-time highs, right? Just to see how like the flow of capital has typically taken form, right? So we've got Bitcoin up top. We've got ETH in the middle. And we've got others down below, which is basically like your true shitcoin ETF. It's everything outside the top 10 by market cap. And what we have seen in the past is, Bitcoin goes into price discovery. We'll put this in orange. And then ETH goes into price discovery. And we'll put this in, ETH blue. And then you'll have typically a little bit after that, then you'll have the smaller, shit coins go into price discovery. We'll put that in purple, right? So you can see here, I can zoom in just a little bit here. You can see how in the past we've seen the flow of capital. It goes Bitcoin, then like ETH being the number 2, and then you have, your alts, right? But this cycle, what we're seeing that's in fact now appearing to be a little bit different, I wouldn't say it's entirely different yet, is, we're seeing Bitcoin up here Where'd Bitcoin go? There we go. Move this up. We're seeing Bitcoin in price discovery, so we can put this in orange. Let's say officially like right here. And we haven't seen others go into price discovery yet, but it's closer to the all-time high than ETH is, right? You can see like, from this high right here, like it's more up, kind of tucked against it, which is what I would have expected ETH to do. And ETH is still back, stuck in Goblin Town, right? So we're seeing kind of the flow look a little different here. And I think, there's some arguments about like why that is, right? Is there more competition, for other L1s other than Bitcoin this cycle? I think that that's true, right? Last cycle, ETH really didn't have as much competition. That could be part of it. ETH moving from proof of work to proof of stake, that could be part of it. I mean, there's so many like questions about it. Is ETH lacking an identity, right? And can we kind of turn this thing around? I will say that, and this is a little bit anecdotal, right? So kind of bear with me, but one thing that we saw happen here recently with ETH was, Donald Trump's crypto business, World Liberty Finance, just bought like $250 million of ETH, kind of around these levels, right? There's part of me that has a difficult time wrapping my mind around the idea of, Trump basically acquiring that position and suddenly there being a giant nuke on ETH, right? And I've seen some really low predictions for ETH, like people are calling for like sub 2K again. And it's a little bit exhausting, right? Because ETH is just kind of like it's just like the one that can't seem to figure it out, right? So I mean, ETH is just so far below its previous all-time high, and then you have something again like others, which is everything besides, or it's everything outside the top 10 that doesn't look nearly as bad, right? It's basically kind of almost where Bitcoin was like back in March, trying to kind of carve out its new value right underneath the previous cycle all-time high. So, the question is, can ETH get off the mat? I think that it can, right? I don't know if we're seeing some kind of, like systemic problem with ETH. I think it's a combination of things, but I also recognize that, I mean, look, the president's shoving ETH, and at the same time, they didn't approve all these ETFs just so that like ETH could go to zero, right? This is sort of the banks and the institutions first cycle. And, ETH works just fine. But I also do think that a lot of that like speculative gambling money that would have normally found its way to Ethereum is kind of in the Solana trenches. So ETH does need to have a little bit of, I don't know, it needs to kind of, it's going through a bit of an identity crisis right now, right? And then again, going back to total 3, we got slightly sidetracked, but I think the point remains solid, right? You can see here that, total 3, this isn't a bearish looking chart, right? This is just a little consolidation under the previous all-time high, right? Like this looks fine. And zooming in a little bit, I also don't think that this looks inherently bearish. I think that there's potentially room to, venture a little bit lower, like we'll see, but we're just in a range right here, but ETH looks entirely different than this. So ETH is kind of like plaguing, the crypto asset class right now. And it's becoming a bit of a problem because the Ethereum ecosystem is so large. Now, what do we think is going on here with ETH from a technical perspective? Well, I'm looking at ETH and I'm like, it's such an obvious level, which has continually been causing us issues, right? It's this 4K level. And then, you've got this little kind of the previous all-time high supply region from last cycle, which was your, I guess, de facto deviation or, final bull trap, whatever. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, all right, it doesn't look all that bad. If you stop comparing ETH to everything else, you could kind of draw this like normie compression and be like, all right, we're at least trying to put in some higher highs or a bullish formation, and you are seeing, in fact, higher lows, right? You are seeing some higher lows. I guess there's a possibility we visit this trend line again. I hope not. But it's possible, right? Like in theory, it's possible. There's also some, very good traders that I know and respect that are saying, well, look, we can't really afford to go back and venture down too much deeper, right? Like if we come back and like, get too deep into this inefficiency from this markup, there's not much really, holding us up, right? And we could do visible range vol just to kind of give us a little x-ray vision to it, right? Let's see if we can get this to show up here. Oops, I don't think I put that on there. Visible range volume profile. Oh, wrong chart. Sorry. We'll go to the Binance chart. I was like, why is that not showing up? Here we go. So, looking at kind of the volume profile of what we're looking at right here. This is our point of control up here, the region in which the most transacting has occurred. So now this is going to be, at least for now, a bit of a sticky region, right? We need to get above this. You clear 33.50, it's looking pretty good. But there's not a whole lot to hold up price until we get down here, right? This is where the next big batch of volume occurred. And it really was like accumulation within this bottoming region right here. So you had this, this giant range. We were in here for like just over 3 months. And you can see that the next real support, from going all the way back here to, summertime in August is going to be down here at like 2,600. So when I say that this is really kind of a do or die level, it doesn't mean that ETH will never pump again. It's just like you have to recognize what it implies if we start to slide too deep below here, right? There's really not much. There's no volume here. Like there's no support until, 2,600-ish, okay? So, and then at that point, you have to question, like now we have, if that were to happen, you kind of have this whole base right here. And the question is, would you kind of come down? And again, we're talking hypotheticals, right? Hold this support, bounce up, but then you've got all this supply above head. Would you see further de-risking? And I think that's where a lot of the concern from these, these people is coming from. And it's valid to suggest like, look, we're kind of floating in no man's land. There really is not a lot of volume below us, at least for substantially lower, right? Now, I'm not going to give a firm opinion on whether like I think we hold or we don't here, right? Like I'm in my bags, I'm in my positioning. ETH has been lagging. It's been a bummer. We went over like, how good total 3 looks, how good others looks relatively, to Ethereum. And it's pretty clear like where that pain is coming from. And it's from an asset called Ethereum, which is a bummer. Now, something I want to point out about ETH is, let's go back to this one so we get a little bit more price history. We're not completely off track, right? Let's go back. And again, this was when ETH was just a baby, but I still think that the seasonal component of it rings true to a large degree. So Ethereum didn't get into price discovery until March of its 2017 rally. Okay. So ETH didn't get into price discovery until like the basically first or second week of March, depending on how you want to count price discovery. March 10th, right? But it was generally moving up. It had kind of a rough January, right? Like this was, let's go down to the daily. January, which of course we're in right now, was relatively rough. This was the end of January right here, right? So this was most of your price action in January before the 2017 rally. And it wasn't so great, right? I mean, you could see pretty clearly here, we had broken down. This could have easily just been like a retest of, overhead supply right here. And, I'm sure a lot of people at the time were potentially prospecting a drop or some more blood, but we ended up having a pretty constructive February, which is, I really think it's going to be important for ETH, right? Like we can move the goalpost a little bit, but like you just can't move it too much more. Okay. So it's January 27th. And we know that in a previous cycle, ETH hasn't really started to move until March, right? Going to the last cycle, we were certainly a little bit ahead of the first cycle, right? Oops. So this was the previous cycle all-time high in 2021. Now, I guess we could call this price discovery, but like not really, right? It was churning kind of above the previous all-time high, but there were some big pullbacks in this region. Okay. So this was, from January. This was basically more or less January. We had a nice gap up, and then we kind of just like chopped around right here. Okay. We didn't really start cooking until this is right here is February 2nd. I would say this was kind of your like breakaway candle, right? When you really popped up and then you ended up retesting, the point of origin of this move right here. And then you went on your crazy rally, right? And this is in log mode. This is really what the chart looks like. So I personally wouldn't consider this like price discovery, even though it was technically like above the previous cycle all-time high. I think price discovery is more when you get like a clean break and it's confirmed to more or less not be a deviation, right? So there's some, bit of hope here where we can say, all right, well, we know in the previous two cycles, 2017, it didn't happen until March. Last cycle didn't really happen until February. Like, it's only January, but we can really only make excuses for ETH for so long until we have to say, all right, something is wrong with this L1. And I would say I'm not quite there yet, but we're getting close. I would say, like, here's the thing too. ETH likes to bottom in the same kind of fashion, okay? For example, just looking at a few, local lows here. We'll go to the 12-hour. ETH likes to do the kind of scary 3 drive into the lows. 1, 2, 3. I mean, this looked awful, right? When the chart looked like this, there was actually, it was ended up being really bullish, right? We got some ETF news and stuff like that. But I remember vividly at this time, there were a lot of people calling for like a full retrace down to this demand, which was the point of origin, which makes perfect sense, right? You accumulate down here, you have expansion, and then you retest the point of origin, and then, you can move on from there. But we ended up, of course, just kind of like, holding where we needed to, break of structure to the upside, and then we had a nice move, right? You guys know how the rest of it played out. And there's plenty of other examples of ETH kind of doing that same 3 drive into the low. Here's another one, right? This was one that I remember quite well because I was actually speculating on some downside here from a little bit higher and just didn't get the follow through because ETH was kind of miraculously saved, right? You had your 1, 2, 3 drive into the low. And then on top of that, there was another reason to be bearish at this level, at least from a technical perspective, where not only did you have this range kind of breaking down with supply above head, but you also had, this trend line basically giving out right here. So, this was a really scary moment because you're like floating in no man's land. Like this was completely no man's land, and then they saved it, right? Right where they needed to. Because it's like the truth is if you didn't save it here, it was a similar kind of profile. And it's like you had this whole inefficiency right here. You barely filled it. This was the Silicon Valley banking collapse. You were there for like a day. But if you didn't, come back and, if they didn't save it, then the obvious point of origin, of demand to retest would have been right here. So ETH kind of has a way of like looking really, really scary and then more or less coming back from the dead, right? I remember that one pretty well. And I mean, this is another prime example right here. This is another one where this looked pretty damn brutal. You had this little range right here. And I mean, I remember when we were sitting like right in here. I mean, this didn't exactly look like it was going to just turn around out of nowhere, right? There were some vulnerable lows. You had some, equal lows, liquidity right here. Everybody and their grandma wanted this one, and then ideally, probably even this one. And then they just kind of ended up saving it, right? More or less right where they needed to. And then, you start cooking, right? Because it's like when you get a breakdown formation and you don't get follow through, you typically get a pretty crazy expansion to the opposing side. So this is, in my opinion, it's kind of getting to that point where ETH looks really scary here. It's more or less floating in no man's land. We could probably draw the range more like this, right? And you've got this kind of 1, 2, 3 going into the low. Like if you don't hold around here and save it here, then you've got this whole inefficiency that is problematic, right? And there's no other way around it. And I don't really see a whole lot of support until, down in this region. And, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. So, just understand like, ETH looks one way, but then at the same time, we could look at something like Total 3. And I don't have the same, innate bearish feelings right now for Total 3. I think, and it's not my favorite to do diagonals, right? But if you saw this trend kind of breaking here on Total 3, you'd most likely at that point see kind of a slow bleed on ETH below this low. Like this is your demand here. You got this kind of 3 drive into the low. And you'd see Total 3 battling this trend line. Then at that point, you're probably going to get a boom type of scenario, right? And that certainly wouldn't be any fun. But there's no denying the significance of this level on ETH because there's nothing below it, right? There's nothing below it. So, I would say like, kind of, hold here. I think there's reason to hold here. I think you can. I think ultra locally, depending on what time we can get this video out, if you start flipping this level here, you've come back, filled in more or less all of your inefficiencies, from this move. You're at demand technically. And I think, I don't know where we're going to be when this video comes out. If you can get back, above 3,200, then you could potentially kind of float your way back up. And when you get back above this level here, 3,350, things start looking pretty good pretty quickly, but we got a little bit of work to do. There's no question about it. So, what am I expecting for February? I typically I typically err on the side of optimism, right? I feel as though it served me well. I recognize the bearish setups. I'm not actively, speculating on downside. That works for some people, it doesn't work for others, right? Like I have a much higher time frame view than a lot, and I haven't always done that. Um, but it's where I'm at right now, right? Um, I also don't necessarily have like the luxury. You guys know a lot of my positioning. Like I don't have the luxury. Like I can't go and like hedge a lot of my ETH beta for downside if it were to break down here. It's just kind of it's a weird situation for me where, um, I can see a setup, I can see something happening, but I have to ask myself, okay, lower or higher in 2 weeks? Okay, lower. And this is a hypothetical, right? Lower or higher in 2 weeks? Lower. Lower or higher in 6 months? Much higher. So there's some situations where because of my positioning and my following, um, and significance in some of these holdings, it's like I don't have the luxury of like quick in and out on some of this stuff, right? So what you guys can do, it's going to look a little bit different than me. So just understand, like, I'm trying to give you the levels here where, you know, if you need to do something, you can. And I don't think that it really is a death sentence for ETH. Like, I really do have a high degree of confidence that it's going to pump. It's just, we're kind of at a scary level, right? And I want people to be aware of that. Um, but I also do have an encouraging like Pepe setup that I wanted to talk to you guys about because ETH hasn't been giving us much signal, right? Um, but something like Pepe, which I would argue has been trading like how we would have wanted ETH to trade, is actually giving me, a lot more encouragement that, a low might in fact be set here very, very soon. So I've shared this here on X, so maybe you guys have seen it, but this is Pepe. And I've got some monthly FEGs marked out here, and I'll just go to the monthly to show you. It's a little bit clustered here, but you can see there was this monthly time frame inefficiency back from, October of 2023. And then zooming back out, or actually I'll show you the current one as well. You can see we're inside of this monthly FEG from the November markup, okay? But what I find so spooky about this is like how the timing always in crypto seems to match up, right? So you've got the same kind of local topping pattern here. So you've got this predatory, bull trap of the highs. The high here in December of 2023 occurred on December 9th. Okay, that's the text above this red dot. The current one, similar kind of bull trap above the high, occurred on December 9th as well. In 2024, January was a bloodbath for Pepe, right? Let's take a measured move here. So January it basically bled in January like 30%. And even from that high, it was all the way from high to low 52%. So kind of a similar makeup that we're seeing like percentage wise. So from like high to low, we're down, now 55%, 57, kind of in that typical like Pepe pullback range, right? Like this one was a little bit more, 60 something. If you want to count the liquidation wick, this is on Binance. Not every exchange was the same. This one had a big liquidation wick down to 63, but really was more like 57, right? If you don't want to count the like one day wick, it's more like 50 to 60%. And what we saw here in January was a bloodbath as a result of kind of like, overexcited retail, right? That is positioning late, a firing into its monthly FEG, and then basically you bottom February 5th, and then 38 days later you were up 10x and you topped March 14th. So we're down a similar percentage. We're firing into a monthly FEG. We have, support below us technically, just like we did over here. So I look at this and I think, this chart doesn't look bad, right? It looks bad because we know that ETH looks bad, and if ETH doesn't hold here, then buckle up. But there's other charts that are sort of ETH derivatives that don't look so bad, which is the tough part to kind of decipher what's happening, because Bitcoin doesn't look all that bad. It's still in a range. XRP doesn't look bad. Total 3 doesn't look bad. BNB does not look bad at all. But then you have this this one ticker, which is just kind of like plaguing the crypto asset class right now, which is causing so much doubt. Like if ETH was doing what it's doing right now, but at like 4,100, it would be a lot more clear, right? It's just that ETH looks so damn heavy. And one more point of confluence I will add on to here is like, let's look at others. So this is everything in crypto outside the top 10 by market cap. It was doing kind of a similar 3-drive bull flag. This time, basically last year, right? Where it had this, it was just kind of like ranging, and you had, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Hopefully you can see that 1, 2, 3. It's not perfect, but you get the point, right? Where you're kind of just floating up here, trying to do like a bullish consolidation. You could draw like a little trend line on it like that as well. So it's like, it's not all bad. It's just like ETH is so unclear here, and it's kind of on its own, right? It's kind of on its own, because I listed all the other assets that look pretty good, but the implications of like what happens if ETH doesn't hold here. So it's a bit confusing, right? But I will say, like, we have seen for ETH beta, specifically something like Pepe, which has huge volume listed on every exchange under the sun, right? All the ETH, the ETH plays we care about, right? We have seen bloody Januaries result in like really bullish Februaries before. So again, I typically side with optimism, right? I mean, conditional optimism, but I'm going to assume that, we should hold here or play out something similar to previous January rotations into February. And hopefully move up. And like, let's just take a look at ETH BTC and see what it's doing right now. So ETH BTC is coming back into its golden pocket. So you can see I'll attach this to last cycle's low and then last cycle's high. I had this pre-drawn. So this was your low. And then I dragged it all the way up to the high. So I can do something like this just to make it super clear. This is what we're looking at right here. And we're at the golden pocket, which is potentially bullish. We're also at like the high time frame point of control, which I could draw on here. I don't know where to start it from. This is the Binance chart. We'll just randomly drag and drop it. So you can see point of control is right here at 0.031, give or take. So, there's some confluence here as well. Additionally, I would like to point out that, the real ETH BTC rally last cycle We'll just zoom out, take a look at it again, keep these drawings on here. It really didn't begin until like March, right? You had a nice move up here, in January, and then kind of actually a sell off in February. So, this was your top here. This was February 5th, actually, of last cycle. And you sold off aggressively all the way till the end of March, and then you moved up. So, what we're really looking to capture here, and, we've been pretty clear, is like we want an ETH BTC rally. We want Bitcoin and price discovery, but we want ETH pushing harder, right? Which seems like a lot to ask right now. But we are coming into a very, a very significant level of confluence for a potential bottom to form. You certainly don't want to see it go too much lower. A lot of other majors look good. ETH is just kind of the odd one out here. So we know that typically like January can be choppy, but February, March, April, May have been pretty good, at least in the previous two cycles. They've been really good. So I'm not ready to give up on the ETH thesis yet, although it has been incredibly frustrating. I just think you are kind of getting to the end of the road here where like something needs to give. You need some catalyst to send you higher. You need some new flows to move you up. You need something to happen soon. And maybe it's this week. We have FOMC this week. Like, we need something, right? Because there's no reason why ETH should be lagging, total 3 and others by as much as it is and plaguing crypto as much as it is. It's really an isolated issue, but it's a big one, right? It's not like we're talking about some random L1. We're talking about a Titan. We're talking about, unfortunately, the king of altcoins, the largest altcoin. We're talking about Ethereum. So I would say, I'm going to be covering this pretty closely because, my cycle thesis right now is still unchanged. We're going to get a big ETH BTC move here in the first half of this year. And I'll de-risk a lot of my altcoins after I get a nice, 3 or 4 month push out of ETH BTC, which has been bleeding for almost 4 years now, 3.5 years. And January we know can be choppy, but I can only move the goalpost so much. And ETH is either being manipulated and suppressed, or there's cause for concern with Ethereum, but it's too, in my opinion, and even if it means being really late to it, historically speaking, getting shaken out of ETH in January hasn't been a great decision, right? So I'm just here kind of trying to talk through the levels because January's been bad for ETH, right? And we're at a very scary level right now. So it's time to watch closely. Like, I hate to be the meme, like the 25-year-old technical analyzer of like, big level, but like we really are at a big level for ETH BTC. Bitcoin looks pretty good here still, just kind of ranging, which is fine, above 100K. Over 100K is safe. But you're really not going to want to see too much more downside here, because I think if it happens again, I don't think it's like a death blow for ETH, but I think it's a death blow for like the cyclical timing of things. I think then you have to go back to the drawing board and look at it and go, okay, I gave it every chance I could. I waited as long as I could and it didn't play out. What now, right? So, big level, right? And things can change really quickly. Like, it takes one daily engulfing candle on ETH to change everything, but we haven't had it yet. So until we get that, you got to be a little bit careful here. But I'm still holding all my positions. If I go down with the Ethereum ship, then I go down with the Ethereum ship. But, fingers crossed, right? But that's it for today, guys. Thank you guys so much for being here. Before you guys go, please consider liking the video and also subscribing if you found some value out of what we just did here today. And last but not least, guys, please consider checking out the links below. BB Terminal is an absolutely awesome product, guys. It's a Swiss Army knife. It's got all of the tools and data that you could ever need or want in order to succeed in these markets. And we custom built it here at BB. We spent about 9 months to about a year, actually, building this thing from scratch, and we are now in beta, so you can actually use it. It's heavily discounted right now, and if you buy the BB terminal, you can also pay in crypto, guys. You check that out. You can pay in crypto. You're going to get access to our Telegram alerts channel also, but if you really want to take your trading to the next level, guys, check out one of our Discord packages. What you can expect there is 3 hours per day of private live voice calls with me and the entire BB team and community. We have active positions channels, TA channels, things that we don't talk about here on YouTube or on X, guys. There's nothing like it out there. And within the BB Discord, you're going to get free access to the BB terminal included for free. There is not another community out there doing what we're doing, guys. So we continue to reinvest our time and our money into the community, and that's why people love it and they stay. So this market is too big to navigate alone. I encourage you to get out there, find your group. We certainly want to be that group for you. Maybe, you know, it's not what you're looking for. Maybe it's exactly what you're looking for, but my trading has gotten exponentially better. My confidence in these markets has gotten exponentially better when I surrounded myself with the guys on the BB team and the BB community. A bunch of guys, like-minded individuals that take it seriously. So definitely consider checking out one of our Discord packages. But if not, join us with BB Terminal plus Telegram. Last but not least, guys, check out the BB Academy. If you like my charting here today and you want to learn all of our tips, tricks, secrets, everything like that, how we cumulatively as a team here at BB have navigated these markets from a technical and fundamental perspective for decades, check out the BB Academy, guys. I just dropped a free course, how to make your trading view charts look beautiful. Important first step. If you don't know how to look at the data and manipulate the data to be easier to understand, you're going to struggle. So check out that free course. But if you really want to take it to the next level and expedite your journey towards understanding these markets, check out the paid course, guys. There's nothing like it out there. I honestly can say with confidence, it's one of the best courses, if not the best trading courses for all levels, beginner, intermediate, advanced. It covers everything you need to know. So a lot of people out there, myself included, teaching TA for free and FA. But there's a difference between a paid product and a free product, and you guys will see that if you join the BB Academy. It's an absolutely awesome course. But yeah, join us somewhere, guys. Join us in the Discord. Check out BB Terminal. Check out BB Academy. You can pay in crypto now for our services, so major benefit. But anyways, guys, thanks so much for being here. Please like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Take care.